All right, I believe we're live. Welcome, everybody, and happy Friday to everybody that's out there. I'm going to do a brief introduction, but many of you probably already know who he is. Shawn Buckley is a Canadian hero, to me at least, because he's fighting for Canadian health. And to be honest with you, we need people like Shawn in our life. So anytime that I have an opportunity to talk to Shawn, I learn so much from him every time that we have a conversation. So I'm really excited to have him on today, and we're going to be able to ask him questions. He has all sorts of updates for us. So it's going to be a great morning coffee. I got my coffee. Get your coffee ready. Thank you so much for coming on to the show, Shawn.
Oh, Mark, it's an absolute pleasure to be on your show. I really appreciate what you're doing and trying to get the word out. So thank you for having me as a guest.
Absolutely. So we got lots of things to discuss because the last time I spoke, I believe it was before Christmas.
Yeah, no, a lot's a lot's changed. I think back then we were talking about cloned meat, and the Health Canada has just approved genetically modified pigs into our food chain. So it seems to never end. I think now with what's happening south of the border, where they're starting to clean up chemicals in the food and the like, that in my opinion, Canada now has the most toxic food supply in the world. So, we should pat ourselves on the back. We're number one. I don't think it's possible to have a more toxic food supply than Canada has, and we should congratulate ourselves.
You know what? So let's talk about this toxic food supply because it over the years, it's just become more and more toxic. When did it become really toxic? Because, it seemed like in the 80s when I was young, the food wasn't as bad. And then just in the last, I'd say 25 years, it's really progressed. And then from there, we could go on to something that you discovered on pork.
Well, I think it's two things. If we're going to talk about food being toxic, we also have to at the same time hit that the nutrients in our food has been going down and down and down. So, maybe I'll just touch that first because that's an easy one. So the U.S. Department of Agriculture routinely does surveys, of our regular foods, our fruits and vegetables, grains and that. Now, they do it in the United States, but we farm the same way. So I think it's fair for us to say, well, these figures likely apply to us also. And they've been doing this since about 1900 and publishing. They do it about every 4 years, a real serious study. And I think it was their 1949 one where they sounded the alarm because what they'd been documenting is the nutrients in our food had steadily been declining. And they reached the opinion around 1949 that you could no longer be healthy because the nutrients in our food had depleted so much. And they actually went so far as to say, well, if you're missing this nutrient and this nutrient and this nutrient in sufficient quantities, which is what they're saying has already happened, here's the chronic illness you get. And if you're missing this and this and this, here's the chronic illness you get. So basically, they were projecting that the North American population would start suffering chronic illness because of malnutrition, which is really interesting because what societies eat as well as Americans and Canadians as far as abundance of food. And yet here we have the USDA basically saying, yes, but we're all going to become chronically sick because the nutrients in our food have, just steadily declined. Now, who is in charge in Canada of our food supply? It is primarily Health Canada and to a lesser degree, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. But it's Health Canada getting to the toxins that says, well, we'll allow this, we'll allow this, we'll allow this. But on the nutrient front, why isn't it? Like the first problem is you can't allow government to have control over your food supply. And they're so, we can talk later on how they're so moving to push the little farmers out. We can talk about pro-action. That, likely in 10 years, we'll only have large corporations running dairy farms and cattle operations and the like, because the regulatory burden will be too high. It's called rent seeking is what economists call it. But back to the nutrition thing, mistake one is we allow the government to take control of our food supply. So it's almost impossible for anyone to be liable for what's happening. And they're not sounding the alarm. Like Health Canada should be saying, requiring of, our produce and our grains and the likes. No, there's certain essential nutrients. Without them, we'll die. Without them, we'll become chronically sick. We're going to require you to fertilize your crops so that our foods are foods, that we actually get what we need. Like that would be common sense. If you're going to give a regulatory body supervision over food, their number one job should be to make sure that the food is giving us what it's supposed to be giving us. But instead, Health Canada and the Canadian Food Inspection Agency has permitted, like my favorite example is glyphosate. Glyphosate is actually a chelator. It pulls minerals out of the plants, and it pulls minerals out of us, which affects our gut biome. So not only do we not have the nutrients in our food, but our foods, every one of us watching this, so you and I and everyone watching this has glyphosate in them. There's so much glyphosate in our bodies that actually leaches minerals that we need to be healthy out of our body. So it's just become an absolute train wreck. And just while we're on glyphosate, so the Food and Drug Administration under Kennedy in the United States has basically come out and said this is toxic and should be banned. And Trump had to sign an order saying, no, it's not banned because our agriculture would collapse. It so depends on it. But at least they're the gears are in motion now to start phasing it out. Because they're agreeing there it's a toxic chemical that it's also, it's a carcinogen to boot. I mean, civil suits are being won because it causes cancer. So some of the people watching this will go, I've never even heard of glyphosate. I don't even know what you're talking about, when this is a complete fail of Health Canada and our media. But now, so we've kind of segued into toxins, but the toxins also take away nutrients, a lot of them. So again, if we didn't have Health Canada and we had to pay attention ourselves, then, we'd probably watch for things in our food, and we probably, because, we can't trust our food is safe, probably manufacturers would compete more on trying to verify to us and marketing to us that their food's safe. But right now, they're immune basically from liability in almost all cases because they're approved of from the government. Why do we need orange popsicles, for example? Like Health Canada approves dyes. And do you know what the test is for a dye? It has to be ultra safe, which means it doesn't cause more than 1 death per million of the population per year. So if there's 40 million of us, Health Canada will approve a dye so we can have orange or red popsicles because only 40 children will die each year. Now,
yeah. So I thought it was just toxic and it could cause, it's a, carcinogen. I had no idea that it leaches your body of the nutrients. That's glyphosate new to me today.
That's how it kills the weeds, is it leaches the minerals out. So the weeds actually die of malnutrition. That's how glyphosate, it started out as it was a cleaner for industrial pipes, much like you'll use CLR to clean the calcium and that off your faucets. They use glyphosate to take minerals that have built up in, industrial pipes. And they just noticed over the years that when they spill it, it kills all the plants.
But wait a second, so how does it kill the weeds, but it doesn't kill the main plant? Is it
because the main plant has been genetically modified to be able to withstand it? But it doesn't mean that it hasn't leached a lot of the minerals out, and it doesn't mean that it doesn't continue to act as a chelator in us. And like somebody very close to me in my family, if they eat genetically modified food, so most of your breads, your pastas, all of that, it's with this genetically modified wheat. This person just has bowel issues like crazy. In fact, just as COVID was hitting us, this person was diagnosed with a rare form of colitis. And, the doctor wanted to put this person on a drug that was just horrific. And then we get locked down. Well, we eat organic at home and the problem went away. And then if we started, eating non-organic, all of a sudden it come back. So we learned, wait a second, this glyphosate is a train wreck. I had interviewed Dr. Michelle Perro for the NHPPA's health tour, which, probably in about 2 months will be online. It's already the full day's online on our site, but she's a emergency room pediatrician that's an expert on glyphosate. And, she says there's a perfect correlation between the increase in glyphosate and autism. Now, there's, also a perfect correlation between the increase of EMF, like our cell towers and Wi-Fi, and autism. And there's also a perfect correlation between the increase of our vaccination schedules and autism. So there seem to be several things that correlate. But, I wonder if it has to do with, nutrition and our gut biome and the like, because there's a lot of evidence that fecal matter transplants, which would repair your gut biome, help. And there's a lot of evidence that certain micronutrients, like there's peer-reviewed government-funded studies using Empower Plus, which is just a vitamin and mineral supplement to treat autism and ADHD. So so when we're talking about glyphosate in food, that really could be a smoking gun for some real serious health conditions that we have. But Health Canada just basically allows toxin after toxin after toxin. And again, once it's approved, like, how do you ever sue them? And we're not paying attention. So our foods are filled with, chemicals and preservatives. Let me even give you another example. So it used to be that, you had the Food and Drug Act and you had the regulations, and that was that. You could at least be assured that our food regulations were followed. And our food regulations are just kind of accumulated wisdom. Like, if too much, orange dye is killing in popsicles is killing too many kids, we lower the amount, and that then becomes the amount in our food regulations, right? So it's kind of, you learn over time, it's accumulated wisdom. Well, here's the hard line we can't cross. Well, then they amended the Food and Drug Act, this is years ago, to permit the Minister of Health to exempt a food or class of foods from basically any of our food regulations, which again is just our accumulated wisdom on safety. But the minister could only do it if the minister was of the opinion it was safe, and it had to be published, like in the Canada Gazette, so that you could hire somebody like me to tell you if a food follows our food regulations. Before, you knew you could trust they were, assuming the company's not dishonest. But afterwards, you'd have to hire somebody to go and check, does this food, is it exempted from any of the regulations or not? And then they amended it so that it no longer had to be published. And Mark, the minister no longer had to be satisfied it was safe. So now I can't even tell you if a food you're eating in Canada, you can't hire a lawyer to tell you whether a food you're eating actually complies with our food regulations.
You know what's interesting about that? When I purchase vitamins, I make sure they're third-party tested, and it feels like there's more competition to be a better product in the vitamin world. And then they're third-party tested, where in our food supply, you just got to trust. You have to trust is what it sounds like. So what's your thought on that?
Yeah, well, the way before we had regulations in Canada for natural health products, it's recent. They only came into force in 2004. And, until 2015, we really didn't have anywhere near full compliance. Before that, we had a whole bunch of innovation, and life-saving products like Strauss Heart Drops, which, there was a court case about it. There's no question in my mind it saves lives. Empower Plus to treat bipolar disorder. The court found as a fact that Health Canada killed people, basically because the company was acquitted because it was legally necessary, or more lives would have been lost for them to continue to make this product available. We've got recovery for arthritis and that, which is just, we're just talking about blockbusters, and joint issues, and that recovery is just crazy good. Well, these were all innovated before the regulations, and we lost innovation. But what used to happen writ large is there's kind of a need in the market, and then somebody will do a bunch of research. Well, this herb's good for this and this and this, and together that probably will meet that need. And they put together a product and they just sell it. And if it didn't work, it would disappear immediately. Because Mark, if you go into a health food store, or go see a naturopath, and you're recommended something for a condition and there's no difference, okay, it didn't work, but you're not buying it again. But if it worked, you're buying it again, you're telling your friends, the stores are noticing it's selling, and then all of a sudden other manufacturers step in, and which is why when you walk into a health food store, there's usually like kind of a group of products for kind of the main things that people go in. So the market was kind of self-correcting. But it's the same with quality, is if you're not making a good product, if you're not verifying that it's good, you're going to run the risk that you're going to go out of business because it's so competitive. And, some products are way better than others. So it's like everything else, do your homework, right?
Yeah, I have a question you might not know the answer to, but it's a burning question now that we've had this discussion here about Health Canada. Is anyone in Health Canada know anything about nutrition whatsoever, or are they it's just pharmaceuticals?
Okay, so no, Mark, no one. So I'm happy to speculate, and I'm happy to tell you what I see. But how can you attribute, like, I think there's some very brilliant people there. But I also think that Health Canada is not there for our health, that they're the enforcement arm for a drug cartel that we call the pharmaceutical industry. And I mean, just if some people are going, okay, this guy's kind of getting crazy. Well, think about this for a second, is most of the drug industry, like the natural health community, is just a teeny part. If we had a pie of, drug spending, it's just a little sliver. And most of that pie are the prescription drugs. Like the amount of money involved in prescription drugs is just nosebleed. And it's likely one of the biggest costs in Canada overall is our healthcare, which is based on two things: surgery and chemicals that had a patent when they were approved, because Health Canada they've structured it so that to get approval to treat anything serious, only chemicals with patents can get through that process. And this is by design. So and we all know it intuitively. If you have to go engage the mainstream medical system for something important, you're going to be offered surgery or chemical drugs. You just don't know they had a patent when they were approved, because, and that's a different conversation. But where were we going? I was going with, you asked, is this deliberate or non-deliberate? Well, and then I said, but Health Canada is basically the front for this pharmaceutical drug cartel. Okay, so the only treatments approved to treat serious health conditions are novel chemicals. Well, think about this for a second. And these novel chemicals it's the prescription ones that are, the lion's share of what's going on. Well, you can only access the only legal treatments through government-funded healthcare. So by definition, government-funded healthcare is the marketing and distribution arm for the chemical pharmaceutical industry. Like, you can't argue it. The only way we can access them is through the government-funded healthcare system. And by coincidence, other than surgery, they're the only legal treatments for serious health conditions because of Health Canada. Now, the Food and Drug Act is actually a criminal law, Mark. The federal government doesn't have jurisdiction over health. So this is a criminal law power. Courts have said it's criminal law. There's some trade and commerce sections, but it's primarily a criminal law act. Well, and the Food and Drug Act has been in its present form since the mid-1930s.
What does that mean, Shawn? Well,
what it means is it's like the criminal code. So it's a criminal act. It's meant to ensure no one gets hurt with dangerous foods or drugs using criminal law power, or else the federal government wouldn't have jurisdiction. But under our Constitution, Section 91 of the British North America Act of 1867, the federal government has jurisdiction over criminal law. So, okay, well, for most of our existence, there has been no natural health community, because they were basically made illegal after the First World War. And it wasn't until the hippies brought health food back, and then in late 70s into the 80s, we started getting natural healers back, nutritionists, herbalists, naturopathic doctors, and the like. So, and that, like I say, is just a sliver of the drug market. So we would expect, hey, this is a criminal law. Like 99.9% of charges brought under the Food and Drug Act must be against these big chemical drug companies that have sold 99.99% of the drugs. Mark, I can't find a single case where a major chemical pharmaceutical company like Pfizer has been charged, even with a minor violation, under the Food and Drug Act. I can find natural health product companies that have been charged. There's kind of a cluster of cases when Pfizer came out with Viagra. It was such a blockbuster that while it was on patent, there would be charges, of little guys making it illegal or people importing it illegally, like counterfeit. And in one of the cases I was reading, the court even says, well, Pfizer started this investigation. So we've got this cluster of Viagra cases. And then we have a cluster of cases where the regular police do, a drug bust. And they find that, these drug people are like cutting cocaine with a pharmaceutical drug, for example. Well, they'll tag on. So there's charges under what would have been the Narcotics Control Act or the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act. They'll tag on some Food and Drug Act charges. But isn't it interesting that even though the chemical pharmaceutical companies are 99.9% of, what is covered by the Food and Drug Act, there's been huge scandals like Vioxx. How many people did Vioxx kill? And surely the safety signals were out there so long before it was pulled off the market. And thalidomide and the like, you would think that there would have been criminal charge after criminal charge after criminal charge. And I mean, is it unreasonable to suggest the fact that there's never been a charge against a major publicly traded chemical drug company that they're immune? But their competition will be gone after. Natural health companies will be gone after. So, yeah. But
well, I have to say, that's why your work is so important. We're going to touch on a bill that we have in committee. You'll be able to explain it.
Can I just answer your question? You asked, do they know about nutrition?
Yes. Do they?
And I want to talk about recommended daily allowances. So, and we'll all have seen RDA, or recommended daily allowances. You pick up a vitamin bottle, vitamin C, so many milligrams, and it'll say percentage of recommended daily allowance. And you'll also see that on a lot of food labels. Now, the recommended daily allowances, there's this list of things, and it's actually illegal. It's illegal in Canada for anyone to sell you, let's say, vitamin C, vitamin D, whatever it is, whatever the nutrient is that's on that list. It's illegal for people to sell you a supplement above the recommended daily allowance. But here's the fun, Mark. If you follow the recommended daily allowances in Canada, in my opinion, you will be chronically sick at best and or eventually die because they're set so low. And where the recommended daily allowances come from is that, when we were preparing for D-Day in World War II, they actually thought, like Omaha Beach, they got through and marched inland, but everyone else got bogged down for a while on the beaches. And but they actually thought they'd have breakthrough everywhere, and they'll have these soldiers just marching into the interior of France. And they thought, we're not going to be able to supply them for 2 weeks. So what's the minimum amount of nutrients that a healthy 20-year-old male needs to function for 2 weeks? They can, collapse after that and need to be in a hospital for 2 months, but they got to be able to pull a trigger for 2 weeks. And that's where our recommended daily allowances come from. It has nothing to, and Health Canada will agree with this. The recommended daily allowance for anything on there is the amount that every single Canadian can take every day of their life. So, my firstborn was premature, just over 4 pounds. So it has to be the amount a 4-pound child could take. So everyone can take every day of their lives, and we wouldn't have a single adverse reaction ever. Well, and that's our legal limit. So which is just absurd. So that's like risk overkill. So we're basically making it illegal to get essential nutrients that you need to survive in the amounts you need. Now, this isn't rocket science. Anyone can figure out that, we've basically made it illegal to be healthy in Canada. Well, that's Health Canada. So do they know about nutrition? There's some really smart people at Health Canada that know about nutrition. But the direction of Health Canada, in my opinion, is not there for our health. It's there so that we actually are chronically sick, so that then we access the government healthcare system, which is the marketing and promotion arm for the chemical drug companies.
I think this is a good opportunity to touch on how we could fight back. But first, is there a place like how are Canadians going to be able to find out the right information to take the right amount of essential nutrients, or is there no?
No, there's yeah. So don't wing it. I mean, I think what you should do, is get some advice, because you want somebody who's going to ask you, well, what is your lifestyle? What are you eating? What is kind of your diet? How much do you drink? What drugs do you use? All of this, and don't be ashamed of anything. It doesn't matter. They're just trying to figure out, okay, if they were you, knowing what they know, what would they take to be healthy, and then they'll recommend it to you, right? So,
is that a naturopath? Are you
can go see naturopathic doctors are definitely qualified, nutritionists. You would be surprised, Mark. Most of our the small independent health food stores, most of the staff there are nutritionists or naturopathic doctors or homeopaths and the like that also work at stores. And if they're not, they're so well trained anyway. So, so I recommend you get advice, and in the very least, and I shouldn't say very least, find a local health food store and, find out who's the best qualified there. And you would be shocked at, the advice you get, and you'll get kind of a regime. But we actually are at that place where you can't be healthy even if you're eating organic and greens and fresh food and all of that fun stuff. You must supplement in Canada to maintain your health, or you're going to be chronically sick.
No, and I agree, because I was eating organic food and I was still suffering from some conditions, respiratory conditions 10, 12 years ago.
And it was NAC, right?
Yeah. And then I started taking NAC and turmeric and vitamin D, and I have my supplements now, and haven't been sick ever since. And I couldn't believe it was a miracle. So I was just deficient in
you were suffering from a nutritional deficiency.
Correct. But I was eating healthy. So it was, I needed to supplement to be healthy, unfortunately. So you're right. It's 100% correct. I believe in it. And the work that you're doing, I have my list of heroes, Don Cherry, and you are part of that list, Shawn. Did you know that?
No, and let's not, because we all have our struggles, and we're all like, it's just, you made a decision that you want to make a difference getting truthful health information out. And most people won't have any idea, Mark, how much work it is, what you do. And so, I just think we need to celebrate each other, because we each have a different path, a different destiny that we're supposed to be doing. And one isn't more important than the other, right?
Well,
so
to be honest with you, just having you on and talking to the audience, on that note, we'll be taking questions. So if you have questions, leave them. That's why I wanted to make a live, because then you could ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
Shawn's here for information purposes. On that note, let's take a look at this.
Oh, yeah. So can I just talk a little bit about, because nobody's going to know what Bill 224 is. So first of all, you'll see at my name, it's Shawn Buckley, and then it's -nhppa.org. NHPPA.org is the website for the Natural Health Product Protection Association. And you can subscribe to a newsletter. And Mark, we don't flood you. We send one out a week, unless there's an emergency, we might send two, right? So, but what we do is we let you know what's going on, and we let you know what events are coming, and then you can choose, what you want to participate in. But one thing that happened is there's a category of drug called therapeutic products that's meant to cover their super dangerous things, your prescription drugs, Vioxx, thalidomide, all of that. And when this category was created, the government in Health Canada was really clear. Well, natural health products shouldn't be in this category because they're ultra safe. They don't carry the same risk profile. But then in the 2023 budget, so budget bills that's the government spending. So, how much does the Canadian government spend each year? Like how many hundreds of billions? Well, they come out with a budget saying, well, here's how we want to spend the money this year. Sometimes they have to create programs. Sometimes they have to amend programs, change legislation so that they can do this. And budget bills are very long, and they're spending bills. They're not bills for us to make changes to our fundamental food safety laws and drug safety laws, but they snuck a change. They moved natural health products into this therapeutic product category. And, one of the changes is the maximum fine went from $5,000 an offense to $5 million per day. Well, now one of the effects is natural health companies are self-censoring because Health Canada doesn't allow truthful health information. And health food stores are afraid to, I just told people, go to your health food store and ask for what supplements. The health food stores are becoming afraid to give that advice because they could be crippled with $5 million a day fines. So this is really quite significant. Well, there's a private member's bill to just move us back to the way we were. Let's get this into the health committee. Let's have a debate there. And we're on a razor's edge, Mark, because we've had 3 conservatives cross the floor. I think the Liberals are 1 away from a majority now. And so we don't know that it'll get into committee. So what this is on our page is, if you click...
So this is you brought it forwards with the conservative. So that's what you're getting at with that. It's a conservative bring this forward. So if it goes to a majority, it could be done. Gone?
Yeah, if the Liberals go to majority and the Liberals don't vote for the bill, this bill was in the last Parliament, but because there was an election called, when a bill hasn't gotten through the complete process in the House of Commons and the Senate, and an election calls, the bill dies, and it has to start afresh with a new Parliament. Well, this bill last Parliament, it was a private member's bill. It got into committee, and what I mean by that is so the way bills are passed in the House of Commons is it goes through 3 readings. And first reading, really nothing happens. You just introduce the bill, and then you adjourn it to second reading because people need an opportunity to read it and decide, do they support it? Do they not support? What is this about? Do I have questions about it?
This one's in second reading right now?
Yeah, they did first reading. With second readings, whether you vote, does this go further or does it not go further? Because people have had time to look at it. Now, the Conservatives support it, the Bloc Québécois support it, the NDP support it, but the Liberals aren't supporting it.
Unbelievable.
But what we're seeing is if it passes second reading, then it goes to a committee, is what it's called. And committees are they're parliamentary committees made of members of all of the parties. And they have a hard look at the bill and they call witnesses. And if they think there should be amendments, they make amendments, and then they send it back to the House, and then it either passes or doesn't pass on third reading. So I don't think the Liberals should be worried about it getting into second reading, because what's wrong with the Standing Committee on Health examining the bill, except that Health Canada is telling them, no, don't, right? So that part you showed on the website is we have a campaign where you can go to our website, so nhppa.org, click on the take action or find out more here as you're showing. We have e-letters. So you just type in your name, type in your postal code, and your MP comes up, and you can send an e-letter to your MP and the 3 party leaders and the Minister of Health. And our system, I think we can send, 8 at a time. It just randomly cycles through the Standing Committee of Health members. So in 5 minutes, you can send an e-letter. And you can do that weekly. You don't have to just send one. We actually have 3 or 4 that cycle through on our website. And even if it was the same one, there's safety in numbers. And then we ask you to do a little more, print it out, put it in an envelope and send it. And when you're sending the e-letter, change the RE line and add a little bit of your own text. You're able to do that to make it your own. But, I always change the RE line, because if I'm getting emails and it's all the same RE line, I go, oh, this is just a form email. But, if the odd one stands out and it's on the same topic, it's like, okay, people are really passionate about this. So we try to make it easy. And Mark, the NHPPA is the only organization out there that is educating people on these issues, watching about these issues, trying to raise awareness. Like, so I mean, I wish I could say, oh, there's also this group, and so that, whenever anyone has an initiative going, you want to support as many initiatives as you can in this area. I wish I could direct you to, other groups doing this, but there aren't. So yeah, so it's really unfortunate, and we need a bigger army. Like, we need you to subscribe to our email list, follow us on social media, and when we ask you to do things like send these letters, please do. And we try to equip you, because some people they don't know what to do. Like, so we even want you to make telephone calls. We've got a 2-pager saying, well, here are the issues, and here's what you can say. Like, we make it easy for you to take action, because part of the problem is people don't, unless they've done it a few times, they really don't know how to interact with their MPs, and they really don't understand that, most MPs want to hear from you. My wife and I, we were in Ottawa in October delivering this petition, and we were speaking with one MP who said, if I get 10 calls, like just telephone calls, let alone letters, if I get 10 calls on an issue, it's like, stop the office, stop everything, because something major is happening, because they never get calls.
No, okay.
They don't get letters. They don't get letters, like people, but they want to know what's important to their constituents, because they want to get reelected. And so if you're not actually calling, whether it's on this issue or other issues, they can't know what you care about. And so, because nobody contacts their MP, if you're willing to, like, that's like the value of an army of 1,000 or 10,000 people behind you. Like, they're listening. Oh, wow, this person feels compelled enough to write like a physical letter, or make a call, or heaven forbid, ask for a meeting.
Yeah, no, I just want to add. So this bill here, it's in order to protect our vital nutrients. Like, this is so important. If you want vitamins in Canada, this is the most important bill.
Well, think about this. So, and I make a joke of it, and I say, like, this may sound outlandish, but you actually need nutrients to be healthy. There's a list of essential nutrients. And, we had Udo Erasmus speak as an expert at our health show, and he was saying, if you're missing even one of these essential nutrients, you die. That's why they're called essential nutrients. Well, it's, as I say, it's illegal for us to provide, meaning the natural health community, to provide you with essential nutrients in the amounts you actually need. But people will share. So let's say vitamin D, the maximum dose they can sell you now is 2,000 international units, which is micrograms, which is nothing. Like, don't even bother taking it. But at least your health food store will say, well, let me sell you in a drop format. You can take a whole dropper and a half, and that'll be good. Well, now they're afraid to say that, because of your Health Canada inspector, before the store could get charged like $5,000 and survive, because they understand they got to be doing this. It's ethical. But now, with an up to $5 million per day fine, even, if a court finds them a fraction of that, they're out of business. So people are afraid. And this bill is to get us out of that category, because the biggest effect right now is this censorship, because Health Canada does not want you to have truthful health information. And maybe we should talk about that, because it's truly upsetting.
No, so I just want to make it very crystal clear for people. What they're doing is classifying vital nutrients as drug classification, which is not acceptable, because nutrients is food. So food is food, and drugs are drugs. So you can't mix them together. And by doing so, it's basically eliminating natural products and natural health choices from the Canadian market, because we're so small. There's only 41 million Canadians. And if The food and health, the vitamin companies are going to look at Canada. I've heard this where they said, you have such a small market. Why bother going through all of the hoops in order to get this thing approved as a vitamin? I'm just going to focus on the United States market and just leave Canada altogether, which makes it very dangerous because eventually we'll have no choice. We'll have 3 vitamins on the shelves because that's the only companies that decided to move forwards with it. And then we're not going to have the choice. And beyond that, I heard they're also going after the natural paths. So we won't even be able to go to a natural path anymore because they're going to be, it's going to be an issue. So this is so important. And you have done a fantastic job. What I'm going to do is I'll put a link after this, after the live stream's done. Oops. So what I'm going to do is put a link of this in the description after so that people can go and just do this. You made it so simple. You just click, add your thing, 3 MPs get a letter. I just have to say, I did similar thing on Bill C8. And what they got 47,000 phone calls and over 37,000 letters. And guess what happened? They put it on the side. It's on pause right now. It's still alive, but they're like, holy, the public really did not like this one. So we can make a difference. And all it takes is if we all do it, then they will be like, wow, people really care about their natural health products. We're going to have to pay attention to this one. And we can't sit on the sideline for this. It's just so important.
You know, you've hit many things on the head, and that's why I ask people, please subscribe to our email newsletter and follow our social medias, because then we do these calls for actions. Marc, when this bill was in the last Parliament, Standing Committee of Health called all their witnesses. It's the very last meeting, and Peter Julian, who is the NDP health critic, introduces an amendment that would just render the whole bill meaningless. Like, why did everyone just bother? And so the Conservative member, Chris Ellis, he filibustered so that they didn't get to vote on that amendment that meeting. So the next meeting's a week away, and we send out an urgent alert, send these letters to the Standing Committee of Health members. Well, there was 250,000 e-letters sent. There was a mail strike at the time. A whole bunch of people faxed letters. But through our system, 250,000 e-letters sent to the 12 members. And that, for the first time ever in Canadian history, a committee member who introduced an amendment voted against their own amendment.
Wow.
So, I mean, so you have power, but if you don't plug in, you can't know. And another thing I wanted to say, Marc, is like you did such an excellent job of saying, like, these are foods, these are nutrients. They shouldn't be treated as drugs. You know, the United States citizens rebelled against their supplements being treated as drugs. And Congress held hearings and concluded you have to treat these as foods. So they passed in the United States the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act of 1994, classifying them as foods. Actually, they set out in law, these are deemed by law to be safe, and the FDA cannot take one off the market unless the FDA has actual, not theoretical, but actual evidence that the supplement is causing harm, right? Like, so let's say somebody was spiking their product or something, or, you know, poor manufacturing. They still have to manufacture healthy, you know, and good manufacturing practices, but they're foods and they're deemed by law to be safe. And well, that makes sense. Why don't we do that?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. But based on what's happening in Canada, they're trying to eliminate vitamins from our system based on creating these regulations, which I completely don't understand. So it's so important that we get involved. Is this bill part of the 150,000 signatures that you collected?
Well, yes and no. So no, I mean, so because we got moved into the drug category, and because Health Canada's then been using, you know, the natural health product regulations are drug regulations. You have to prove the product's safe. You have to prove the product's effective and go through this licensing process. And most people go, oh, well, that's great. But it's actually cost lives. So they don't have to do that in the United States. And everyone, Health Canada agreed, will say, well, we can't show that our products, which are heavily regulated, are any safer than the United States products, which are not regulated, and are any safer than our Canadian products before we impose these regulations. But our products sure are less effective. And we haven't had any of the lifesavers. And we have so much censorship that it's crazy. So, yeah, it absolutely makes zero sense what we're doing.
Unbelievable. So what do you want to talk about now? I know that the cloned.
Well, actually, I think we should save that for another show. I'd like to talk about censorship so that people understand what I'm talking about. So remember, we're a drug, so we actually have to get a license. We have to get Health Canada to approve us. Now, for any drug, whether it's a chemical drug or whether it's vitamin C or, parsley in a capsule, you have to justify a label claim. So let's say I'm a chemical drug company and I want to treat depression because there's so much money in that. Well, I will apply for a license to treat depression. Well, you can't get approval for serious health conditions for natural products, but there's Empower Plus, which is probably the world's best treatment for bipolar disorder and major depressive disorder and the like. Well, they know that they can't get approved for that. So they'll get approved for a claim like supports mental health and well-being, which is completely meaningless to anyone. Now, once you get that approval, all you can say is the label claim. So let's use the chemical drug company with depression as an example. If they don't get approval, they're not going to share any information with anyone, and nobody wants the information because who cares about a chemical drug that didn't get approved? Like, the public doesn't care about that. But if they do get through the approval process, they're only allowed to say the label claim. So they're only able to say it's an antidepressant or it treats depression, which is the same thing. Well, let me explain how that works. So I'm in a federal court case years ago against Health Canada, and they hire an outside expert who is a psychiatrist, that all this person does is they run a company that gets psychiatric drugs approved by Health Canada. Now, he's under oath. And I'm examining him. There's transcripts of this. And he starts complaining to me about how hard it is to get new antidepressants approved. He says, I have to give Health Canada 2 double-blind clinical trials showing the drug works. Now, when he says that, he knows and I know, well, he means he has to run a very short trial, likely not more than 3 weeks, because they're relying on the placebo effect. He also, they will pick super healthy people to try and minimize any safety signals. Like, it's usually said that, a doctor will never see a participant from a clinical trial because they're not real world people. And he also knows, and I know, well, what we're talking about is just people subjectively describing their symptoms. So he has to provide 2 double-blind clinical trials where in the drug group, the people report subjectively an improvement in their symptoms more than in the sugar pill group. And it's statistically significant. There's kind of like this magic statistical formula. And if there's enough of a statistical separation, we pretend, and I'll emphasize that word, we pretend that means the drug works. So he's saying to me, he's complaining, I've got to give Health Canada 2 double-blind clinical trials showing that the drug works. So I run 8 double-blind clinical trials to get the 2. Let that sink in for a second. He's got to give Health Canada 2, but he's telling me under oath for an antidepressant, he's learned, just run 8 right away. Don't run 2 and then 2 and just run 8, because he's learned they got to run 8 to get the 2. Now, the other 6, they could be inconclusive. They could show the sugar pill works better than the drug. They could show the drug works better than the sugar pill, but there's inconvenient safety signals. It could be a combination of that. Here's where the censorship kicks in. If that drug's approved, it's illegal for the chemical drug company to share with you those 6 failed clinical trials. Now, it's illegal for them to share with you the 2 successful trials, but the researchers can publish them, but the researchers only publish the successful trials, whether that's because of contract terms or what, I don't know. but it's only the successful trials that get published. You know, we had Professor Alan Castles share as an expert witness at our health show. Well, he was saying the third leading cause of death in Canada are antidepressant drugs. So we could have this chemical pharmaceutical company receiving report after report after death, report after report of, you know, serious injuries. It's illegal for that company to share. Let that sink in. It's illegal for them to share
Trying to let it sink in.
information with you, because all they're allowed to say is antidepressant or treats depression. Now, let's flip this on its head. I've shared with you there's this natural health product, Empower Plus. Well, there are over 30 published peer-reviewed journal publications, all funded by governments, not a single one by this company, governments around the world, including the Alberta government. And many of these publications are in the blue chip, like Journal of Psychiatry, Journal of Child and Adolescent Psychopharmacology. It's illegal for True Hope to share with you peer-reviewed published journal publications funded by governments around the world. All they can say is the label claim supports mental health and well-being, or whatever it is.
Why are they keeping that information from us, Shawn?
Because the public would lose confidence in the public healthcare system if the law was what it should be, that regardless what it is, chemical, natural, it should be the law that you have to publish all information you have on a drug. So it should be so that if people care, let's say they want to put your child on this antidepressant, your teenager, and you actually want to do the research, it should be that the company has published all 8 clinical trials so that you can see the successful ones and the failed ones, and you can see the reports of death, and you can see the other adverse reaction reports, and you can see whatever else, including, you know, awful animal studies or the like.
But I feel like we would gain trust from that, as opposed to the current system where we don't trust anything.
Mark, people don't understand how toxic the chemical pharmaceutical drugs are. So I just shared with you that the third leading cause of death, according to Dr. or Professor Alan Castles at the University of Victoria, are the antidepressants taken as directed. I followed up with him after the health show saying, can you point me to some further research on this? And he directed me to Professor Goetz, who is a professor at the University of Copenhagen, also a medical doctor, who is publishing quite widely and really backing up his research. And he's of the opinion that the leading cause of death in Western nations are the chemical pharmaceutical drugs. And they're so ineffective that it's crazy. So if you understood that there were natural remedies that were 100 times, 10,000 times safer for almost every condition, and that the chemical pharmaceutical drugs are horrifically dangerous, we would all try natural remedies first and only use chemical pharmaceutical drugs as a very last resort. Our entire system would collapse. And as I say, the government-funded healthcare is by definition the marketing and distribution arm for the chemical drug companies. And how can it be that the only treatments approved for serious health conditions are chemical drugs that had a patent when they went through the new drug approval process? And how can it be that no chemical drug company that I can find has ever been charged under the Food and Drug Act, like even of a labeling violation, something minor? It shows you that the system isn't there for our health.
Well, my issue is that, there's a place for pharmaceutical. There's some good things, but my problem is there's no balance. There should be balance where my main problem, and this is part of, who I am and what I do with my content, is I believe that Canadians and people should have the choice. If you want to go and do natural medicine first, you should have that option, and you should have all of the information available to you, which we have no information. I'm trying to look up stuff on ivermectin and where to get. You can't get any of that stuff in Canada. You can't even the information's hard to find about that stuff, or any kind of thing that might be preventative or keep you on a healthy lifestyle. You just can't find anything. It's not right. So I want
It,
it. Yeah.
well, I mean, you're touching on something so broad, like the censorship. Mark, I don't know how old you were, but I remember when the internet was fresh, before Google and all of this, all the algorithms just controlled the narrative and only allowed us, I mean, if you can even get, to page 97 and, actually find real information, but you could do a search and you'd just be shocked, somebody posting in their basement something eclectic. You could find it. You could find anything. And now I can't find anything. So it seems with every year, the internet has become more and more useless, except for getting directed to purchase at the big corporate people and getting information on a narrative that is 100% controlled. You're hitting something huge. And ivermectin, I was doing research for ivermectin in the last 2 weeks. And the World Health Organization, years ago, it reached 4.4 billion doses that they just give to people because it's a wonderful anti-parasite drug for the third world. So they have it as part of this mass drug distribution program. They just, every year, they're handing out hundreds of millions of doses of ivermectin. When we were in COVID, one province in India alone gave out 220 million doses. It's likely the safest drug in history. It's been so widely used. And my understanding from, both watching and I've interviewed Dr. Pierre Corey, you pretty well can't kill yourself. If you just really go out of your way to overdose on it, you feel sick and you just wait it out. Right. But it's not going to kill you. So it's super safe. And almost everywhere in the world, it's over the counter.
So why in Canada can you not get your hands on, why are they, what's making them, it seems like everything they're offering us is highly dangerous, including during the pandemic. The only thing open was the liquor store and shops, those, but it just seems like all our options are, and then the safe stuff. I heard they tried to ban NAC in Canada, and they banned it in the US for a year. NAC, the vitamin, they said we use it in the hospitals to cure people from reverse poisoning. So it's a medicine, so you can't buy it. It's a blockchain amino acid. It's one of the safest things you could give. Even you could give it to children, but they try to do that. So it's just, I have a lot of questions. That's for sure.
I'm of the opinion that our healthcare system in Health Canada, it's hard to argue because actions speak louder than words. They are there to promote the chemical drug companies. Now, what I don't know is government captured by the chemical drug companies, or is this, government plan and they're just using the chemical pharmaceutical companies? Because let's even talk about the allopathic model. And I need to explain to your audience, what the heck's that? I've never heard of the allopathic model. There are different traditions of healing. So if you go to a naturopathic doctor, they're going to say, well, we actually have to look at the entire person. We have to look at, what you're eating. We have to look at your workload. We have to look at your physical activity. We have to look at what's going on with you emotionally. We look at the whole person, and then we try to solve the problem. You're coming to us usually because you're suffering. Well, we're not here to address the symptoms. We're here to solve the problem so that your symptoms go away. You're cured, and then you don't have to come back. Same thing with, if you were to go traditional Chinese practitioners, nutritionists, every other healing tradition except allopathic tries to cure you. The allopathic model is the opposite. It's like if somebody comes to you who's suffering, whatever you do, and you can do almost anything, but you can't do this. Don't you dare, allopathic healer, cure them. Don't solve the underlying problem. No, no, no. What you try to do is reduce their suffering by addressing the symptoms.
No, I agree.
That's the model. And then, so after World War I, we outlaw every other healing tradition. So every state in the US, every province in Canada passed laws that basically made it illegal for anyone except medical doctors who are belong to their college. So the acts say, here's the practice of medicine, and it's defined so broadly, it includes diagnosing, treating, recommending, anything, advertising, and only doctors can practice medicine. And it's these allopathic doctors. So we outlawed all the other healing traditions. And they were gone. They were gone really until the mid-70s. They're just coming back, and now they're attacking again. So we've got naturopathic Dr. Annie Janot in Quebec, who was recently convicted for practicing medicine, and the Court of Appeal upheld the conviction. And now she's awaiting sentencing just for helping patients as a naturopathic doctor. And the issue isn't, was she saving lives? Was she, helping people tremendously? Was she qualified to? No, those aren't the issues. You're not a medical doctor. You can't practice medicine. You can't help people. And so the allopathic model is the model in our healthcare system, our government-funded healthcare system. And if we got to vote on this, if Canadians voted, which model of healing do you want in our government-funded healthcare system? No one would vote for allopathic. We want to be cured. But they don't cure. I mean, almost without exception, we don't cure you. We'll do surgery on you, and we'll address the symptoms with chemical drugs, which don't cure you. They're perfect for the allopathic model. If you're going to impose a chemical drug system onto a nation, you have to adopt the allopathic model, because if you adopt a healing model, the chemicals don't work. Yeah, and all of this, you can take a step back and go, well, this is all planned. This is pre-planned. And a lot of people go, oh, Rockefeller with the Flexner report and all of that basically outlawed all the other healing traditions and imposed this on us. Well, that may be true, but it's gone on for over 100 years. And so maybe it serves government also.
Yeah, so it was interesting because whenever I go to the doctor and I ask them, I say, hey, luckily I don't need anything now. I'm healthy. But before I say, hey, how long do I have to use this thing for? And he said, forever. I said, what? What do you mean forever? They're like, yeah, forever. You're just, this is your life now. And I reject that fully. I'm like, I don't want forever. I want solutions. I want to get, do whatever it is to get better. And they don't offer that at the, they just offer whatever they have. And then you go on your way because we have so much distraction. We have our TV, we have social media, we have, many of us have to work multiple jobs in order to survive in this economy. It's overwhelming. And then we just take whatever they offer us. It would be nice if, and it's only for the people that really care about their health and they'll actually pay money to see a natural health physician. They're going to get their vitamins checked, through blood samples, and then go on to, eat better. And then here's your nutrition. And then all of a sudden you feel better and you don't need anything. That's at least what happened. That's my personal story 12 years ago. Young man, I looked healthy on the outside, but I was lacking all sorts of nutrition and nutrients, and I was eating a healthy lifestyle, but it was, I can't cheat. Like some people could cheat. I can't eat highly processed stuff. I got to eat a more paleo form of diet. So hunter-gatherer, that's just me for my blood type. It's important actually for Canadians to go and actually find out their blood type, because there is a foods that you're supposed to eat for your specific blood type. And I didn't know this until I did my own research. And then also you go to a naturopath where they look at, are you deficient in vitamin C? Are you deficient in vitamin D? What are you deficient in based on blood samples? Yes, it costs money. Too bad that our government doesn't cover that, because if they actually covered what we're deficient in, we'd never see the doctor ever again.
Oh, no. I think that, and it came out during our health show. And so if people subscribe to us, we're in the process of building a different website called NHPPA TV, where we're posting almost like Netflix, making it really easy to access these speakers. But like there's experts, but there's also just ordinary Canadians like you, Marc, telling their stories about how literally they were, dying under the medical system or were completely disabled with no answers. And then they come across natural remedies. But lots of experts were saying, really leading causes of our chronic illness are malnutrition and toxic overload and or a combination of that. So when you're sharing your story that, you're really sensitive to actually what you eat, I think a lot of people are. And you really do have to pay attention. And I think, we don't have naturopathic and natural things covered in our healthcare system. And this is by design, but I think the problem is our media is funded by government and the pharmaceutical companies. Even our private media, the government grants to private media are nosebleed, and they want you to be accessing the government-funded healthcare system. They want you to be basically chronically sick on these chemical drugs, because none of this is a secret. Right, like it's not a secret, and I would invite everyone. So I don't know if she's still the chief editor of the New England Journal of Medicine, but her name is Angie Marcel, and she was for decades. She may still be, and she wrote a book I think called "Doctors: A Story of Corruption." But if you just Google her name and say "book on corruption," you'll find it. And she writes in there. So understand, she's a journal editor, a medical journal editor, and the New England Journal of Medicine is like one of the top-notch, if not the top-notch, most respected medical journal in the world. And she's done this for decades. And I recall she said something like, I came to this conclusion slowly and reluctantly as, editor of the New England Journal of Medicine. But she carries on and says, but, you can no longer trust most of the published medical research and the medical guidelines used by the doctors. Now, Angie Marcel is also a medical doctor. She's not just a, expert in peer-reviewed medical publications, and she's a world expert as the editor of the New England Journal of Medicine. But she's basically telling us in this book, you can't trust the medical literature at all. Like the book outlines how it's so gamed and corrupted, and and you won't sleep at night after you read the book, but also the medical guidelines based on this fake research. So, you show up in the hospital for anything serious, they basically have guidelines of how to treat you, and they're not supported by science. They have a different agenda.
Unreal. So what, the next time I have you on the show, because you always share so much knowledge, I think you mentioned something about ivermectin in Mexico.
Well, okay, so you were talking about ivermectin. So when I was sharing some stats with you, in most of the world, ivermectin is over the counter. And, the state of Florida is got a bill right now to have ivermectin over the counter until the feds make it that way. But ivermectin was attacked during COVID because it's such an effective antiviral that it would have been a solution, and then they couldn't have forced these emergency measures on us. We have this public health emergency, so basically everyone take a vaccine that's really not tested. Pfizer even admits, so the biggest vaccine in Canada, Pfizer admits that it wasn't tested to prevent you from getting the illness. Well, why would you take, the whole purpose of forcing it on everyone was so that we wouldn't transmit it to others. Well, it wasn't tested for that.
Yeah,
they can't say that it prevented transmission. So, but this couldn't be forced on us if we could have ivermectin. But, you said it's hard to get ivermectin in Canada. Ivermectin is approved for 2 parasites in Canada. And the only drug company it's approved, so the only drug company that can make it is Merck. And probably if you went to the doctor with confirmed lab results saying you had those parasites, the doctor wouldn't write you a script for it because they're afraid of losing their license. In Alberta, they were actually, I think, told you could be it would be professional misconduct for you to prescribe ivermectin off label. So, but Marc, so many Canadians want ivermectin that you can buy it there's a whole black market for ivermectin. And now when Health Canada discovers one like Ezra Healing and Kelowna, they attack them. But it's really easy to buy ivermectin in Canada just from a black market source.
And that just, I mean, it would make more sense if it was regulated, and public could just purchase it.
Well, this is the nature of paradox, isn't it? So Canadians want it. Health Canada, our law is no, you can't have it if it's not approved by Health Canada. So no, you can't have it unless you've got this, river ringworm or whatever it is. So no, it doesn't matter that it's perfectly safe. It doesn't matter that almost all of the world has it over the counter. Like in third world countries, they call it Sunday, so they remember to take it once a week. They take it on Sunday. So they actually call it Sunday. So, yeah, but I mean, Mexico is an example where it's just, they don't have prescription drug category. So you can go to a pharmacist and buy basically anything that here we have to go get a prescription for, which means that people have to take responsibility. So most people will get medical advice before they would access something that's prescription. But I'm willing to bet that Mexico has better health outcomes than Canada because they've got natural healers. They have homeopathic doctors. They're absolutely free. I visited this one establishment. We were down in Mexico in January into February in Mazatlan, and this was it's a clinic, but they have a storefront where the fellow was fourth generation. So his great-great-grandfather and his grandfather and his father and himself and Dr. Dominguez. And, so he's trained, but he's also trained by the family in self-study. And they had homeopathic remedies there and natural, and they've got the chemical also. But the clinic there and the practitioners, they're actually free to try and determine, well, what's best for this patient. And their hands aren't tied. It's basically integrative practice over the entire nation. And, while we were down there, a friend of mine was at a clinic elsewhere in Mexico getting, a type of cancer treatment that isn't available in Canada because a patent isn't involved and they wouldn't get approved. And we all know about that. I mean, let's say you like fecal matter transfer. I remember being involved in a file where I'm speaking with medical doctors in the States who sent their children who were autistic to this clinic and just saw like complete turnarounds. But they had to send them to this clinic in Mexico because in the United States, like in Canada, you can only get fecal matter transplant for basically E. difficile. That's, untreatable with antibiotics. Well, it's safe because nobody's getting hurt when they're getting this fecal matter transplants with E. difficile. So why do Canadian parents who, have done their research, you're not going to pay big money to fly to Mexico and access a clinic. So they've done the research. Nothing else is helping their autistic kid. Why don't we have that freedom?
Good question. That's a very good question. And I agree. It's, it seems like traditions, family traditions, knowledge passed down, plus having an open system where people really want to see you get better. It seems like that's a system in Mexico that they have, and you could just go and get immediately. Unfortunately, in Mexico is you need to have money. So that is one of the sides in Mexico is, the people that are well off can get immediate medical and prescription. And, so that's the one thing, but that's
the way it is in Canada too, because, like when you can still watch the health show on our website, we just haven't, got it. So it's going to be like really cool and really easy. But we had speaker after speaker. One that comes to mind was just this young mom that, had restless leg syndrome. And So what would happen is she'd go to bed at night and both legs, it's just almost like electric shocks and the muscles are twitching. And it was extremely uncomfortable and painful. And the only way she could stop it would be by walking around. So she's walking around all night. Well, she's getting fatigued. She's getting depressed. She's getting sick. She's actually got to the point where she's lost the ability to care for her 2 young kids. Her husband's having to step in. She goes to the medical doctor who said, oh yeah, you got restless leg syndrome. And he says, well, we don't have a treatment for that, but I'll prescribe for you a Parkinson's drug. Now she looks into the drug and it's like, Mark, you or I wouldn't take it. Like it's a one-way ticket to serious side effects, and it would be a lifelong thing. So she goes and sees a naturopathic doctor, says, oh yeah, you need magnesium. And like within 24 hours, it's gone. And like any health food store person trained would know that. You know, it's kind of like you're thirsty, drink water. It's so well known. But the allopathic doctors are not trained in that because that would be a cure. They're not trained in malnutrition. Like they want to help, but they're captured by the system. Like, I mean, you read Noam Chomsky, Manufacturing Consent. It's the professional classes that are brainwashed more than anyone else because they have to be, because they have to buy into the system. It's not the medical doctor's fault. It's not the lawyer's fault. We're indoctrinated. We're the captured classes, the true believers, because we have to be. But back to the thing is we have to pay in Canada. Like the medical system for her was a dead end. She had to pay to go see a naturopathic doctor. And all our regulations have done. Remember, I told you no one can say that our products are any better or safer or more effective than the US products. But ours now cost 4 or 5 times as much, where they used to be pretty well parity, because we've got all this regulatory burden. So low-income Canadians can't access natural health products. They can get free advice at the health food store. They can start that dialogue and the person will get to know them over time, and they can really, really benefit from that advice, but they can't afford the products anymore.
No, I completely agree. Just so everybody's aware, you should take magnesium. It's safe. And the best kind of magnesium is glyphosate. Or no. Yeah.
You're thinking malate for muscles. But like people that let's say get migraines are going to be L-theranate. There's different types of magnesium in the health food store if you tell them your issue. But all types are good, and we're all magnesium deficient.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm getting at. So it's good to get one. But there's one that absorbs more than all the others, and I believe it's the one with a G.
Okay. Yeah, but I mean, there's different types. Like, I mean, I know that I've been recommended to use malate at night to help sleep and deal with, muscle twitches. Somebody I know with migraines, they've been recommended L-theranate. There's different, and which is just more likely to pass the blood-brain barrier. So there's different types, in a health food store or naturopathic doctor would guide you straight on that. But we're all magnesium deficient.
Completely agree. And some of the magnesium foods is the dark leafy greens have magnesium in them. Glycinate. Thank you. Somebody just helped me. And I thought that's what it was.
Yeah. Don't say glyphosate.
No, it's not glyphosate.
Magnesium glyphosate.
No, glycinate. That's what I meant.
Well, thank you, audience, because we're just doing this live. We don't have other screens up.
Yeah,
so.
My audience knows that I have trouble pronouncing words in my show, and they're like, well, you said it wrong. And, what they don't understand is I actually learned French before English. But I've lived in English society, but I went to an only French school, elementary school I was French in an English society, and then I transferred into English. And because of that, I have difficulty pronouncing certain words and names. And my mother, she lived in Quebec until she was age 15. You would never know that she left Quebec. She's lived in English side of Canada for 50 plus years. She can't say any of the H's, J's. And huge accent, and 80% of her life is in English. So the language you learn under the age of 10 goes the rest of your life. You kind of have that, but it's good. I'm bilingual now, and but what's funny is when I speak in French, they're like, "Oh, I don't like your accent. What kind of accent is that?" And I said, "It's actually a Vancouver French accent." And they said, "So it's unique." And I'm like, "I'm not Quebecer accent. I'm not from France. I'm maybe in the middle. It's a Vancouver French." So it's just for people that out there that go, "What? Why can't he say words?" It's unfortunate. I got a few supers here, so thanks, Wick. So he says, big pharma science has made such tremendous progress that there's hardly a healthy human left. Yeah, it's, I have to say, I mean, when you're at the very end and it's, sometimes you got to do the healthy choices, you do the nutrition, and sometimes you do need the pharmaceuticals. So I'm not against pharmaceuticals completely. I mean, there is a place for it, but the way that it is right now is we're not offered let's take these things to avoid pharmaceuticals completely. Let's live a healthy lifestyle. Let's have options for people. It's just, let's go straight to the pharmaceuticals. And pharmaceuticals in itself, if you go straight to them, they're lifelong. And then you have one that leads to taking another. And then next thing you know, you're on 10 different pharmaceuticals, and you're actually not living your best life. It's very unfortunate because there's all sorts of side effects with all these things. So you have to have a balance. I mean, when you've made it so far down, you need solutions. So that's why I'm so happy with the work that you're doing, Shawn, and providing people with the knowledge, your website. I'm going to leave a link to give people something to do, because it's so important that this bill gets presented to the second reading. And then it's also important that, it goes to third reading. It becomes law that we have natural choice of natural health products. And the only way that this is going to happen is if everybody out there that's watching this takes action. Our politicians are not going to fight for this. This initiative is from all of us saying, hey, we want to take control of our health. We want to have options that are available to us that's outside of the pharmaceutical, like vitamins. And this is our stance. So don't sit on your couch and decide that somebody else is going to send the email. You send the email, and I'm going to make it easy. And Shawn made it extremely easy, but I'm going to put a link so that you just click, and within under 5 minutes, you get all this out, or is it under that?
Oh yeah, no, like in 5 minutes, you could send the form letter in less than 5 minutes. So I just encourage people to change the reline. And, if you want to put in some of your own words into the text, our system allows you to personalize the letter that we've written. But if you're just sending the letter without changing the RE line, without adding any of your own text, it really will take you a minute and a half. And then come back and do that at least once a week, or do it every day. So because there's something about numbers, and
So
print it out and send it by mail.
It says right here. So it says task 1, send an electronic letter. Send your letter to a member of parliament. So if I were to do this, I click here, I put my name, last name, email, postal code. Then it has it'll auto-populate based on your postal code. So it goes to your MP, the party leaders, and a couple of the members of the standing committee. So you've done all the work.
Yeah.
Oh man. You know what? I'm going to listen to this. I'm sending a letter right now.
Yeah. Well, there you go. So people can see how easy it is.
It's already done. Okay. Oh, wow. Look at this.
Yeah. You see, that tells you who it's being sent to.
Don Davies. Oh yeah. He's blocked me, by the way, on my ex account. I've never spoken to him, but these NDP, they don't like truth. That's for sure.
Well, actually, in all fairness, Don Davies over the years has been really rational and supportive of natural health products.
Oh, good. That's
so,
good.
So I think that he's an MP that I support. Because he's on this issue. Like, we're nonpartisan.
Yeah.
Because this isn't a party issue. This is just people, you know, this is asking the question, how do we get the best health outcomes, which is looking at both benefits and risks, and looking at all healing traditions, and how do we just do this the best way? And shouldn't people be allowed to make their own health decisions? Let's get reasonable.
This is pretty amazing because it has the people that are in my writing. It has Pierre Polyev. I guess the only person it does. It has Mark Carney, Pierre Polyev, Francois Blanchette, Dan Mazier, Don Davies, and then Wei Chang is my my current MP. So it's all done for me. And look, it says how many is that? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And then let's see what happens. It says keep me updated. Yes, add my voice. I'm clicking. Let's see what happens here.
There you go. It's done, and asking you to take the next step, which you can or can't take. So, we kind of have a few steps that we'd like you to take. So,
wow. Okay. So, and then this is you could do a physical letter after that.
Print it off, right? So, because even though you've sent an e-letter, printed letters speak louder. So you can just print it out, put it in an envelope. To your MP, you don't even need a stamp, and mail it out. And then we all
step 3, post on your social media. What does that look like?
Well, we have some posts that you can copy and paste into your own. So post it in your own social media. So we try to make it easy for you to make noise about this. And
okay, this is pretty easy. And then you just click on one of these things, and then it goes. Wow, pretty good.
Yeah, so that's what we do is we try to make it easy for you to take action. And then after you've done this a little while, you're actually able to just do it yourself because you get a feel for, okay, this is what I do. I can make my own posts, right? But we educate you as to what the issues are. Like we were just touching on 224, but there's this whole kind of self-care framework, this whole new regime they've been phasing in, which this is just a part of. And we need to resist it. But if you don't even know what's happening, and you don't know that naturopathic doctors, for example, are being attacked, like they seem to be ramping it up, then you can't be raising your voice and saying, no, I don't support this. Let's protect our other healers. We want to be able to access them.
Good. We got a super here. Hey, Shawn, can we get a petition together along with a mandate? All doctors we ever see have to wear a NASCAR-style lab coat. So we know they're responsible by or are trying to...
Sponsored by, yeah. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, they should have to, wear a lab coat that says sponsored by Pfizer or whatever, right?
That's pretty
good. But I mean, it is funny, like TV, like how many programs sponsored by, the chemical drug companies, like the amount and the government funding. So no, that was a really fun comment.
Yeah, that's great. So we're nearing an hour and a half.
We're
but it's great. I mean, we always have great conversation, and you know what? This is our first live of this year. We did a few last year, which were highly successful. It appears that people enjoyed this live. Let us know. Did you enjoy the live? Would you like to have Shawn back on? What I'm going to do next time is post a week in advance so people can mark their calendars, share it with other people. At the same time, in that feed, I'll put it on my Twitter X account. In that feed, you could start asking questions you'd like me to bring forwards to Shawn so that we can prepare the show together. Shawn's also going to have stuff that he's going to want to cover because he's always doing research papers. He's doing research for us so we could touch on those items in the show. And then it could be more of a discussion. Plus, Shawn brings crucial information. I can't wait to get an update on Bill C-224. It is delayed currently, but it will be moving forward. So I'm going to provide everybody an update on that. Probably, Shawn, what we should do is when it does get put forwards and there is a second reading, I'd love to have you back on the show, and that could be our trigger point to come back on.
Yeah, and I'd also like to talk. You kind of raised it, but I deflected on this genetically modified pigs thing because it's just scary what's happening to our meat supply. And it can also talk about how they're forcing dairy farmers to like vaccinate and drug the heck out of their cows. You know, like just as a teaser, I was speaking with a dairy farmer. They've been farming on that land since 1950, so 76 years, you know, so his grandfather's father, now himself, his father's still involved. Listen, speaking to the guy, you know, that like he loves his animals. Like one of their cows will stay on their farm for 20 years, a dairy cow. And like their business depends on the herd being healthy. So like if something needs to happen, they happen. Well, they would traditionally just vaccinate once. It's called an 8-way. And he says the only reason we do that one is we actually do have a problem with what's called blackleg. If we're not vaccinating, you know, the calves with that, then, you know, it can become a problem. And again, they care about their animals, and then their livelihood depends on their herd being healthy. You can't sell milk of unhealthy cows. So, and there's just passion in this. But he says, so before we would vaccinate a cow once. And I mean, really healthy cows, like, you know, unless the cow needed something, but just generally speaking, they're not having problems. Well, there's this proactive program that's now mandatory for all dairy farmers. And it's almost like, well, literally, you almost have to be wearing a hazmat suit if you visit a dairy farm now. But like there's all these, literally a textbook of standard operating procedures. They're basically trying to force out the little guys, so only corporations. But where he was going is now we got to do the 8-way every year. They've got to do about 4 vaccines every year. They've got to do other drugs. And he's actually seeing worse health outcomes. So they never needed it before. They're seeing diarrhea problems with calves, and the cows are taking way longer to get impregnated. So they're actually seeing worse health outcomes, but it's being forced on them. And it kind of raises the question, what's happening to the milk? Right? So like there's some real issues out there that nobody knows about because nobody's speaking about it. And I think people, they can't complain to the government and say, no, actually, I don't want cows that are being vaccinated just because the program says they have to, when the expert farmers are actually seeing worse health outcomes. And the curious thing, Mark, is with humans, there haven't been a lot of studies with enough numbers comparing vaccinated adults and unvaccinated adults, like humans. But, you know, like your audience should watch the movie An Inconvenient Study that recently came out with Ford Health Center, where the numbers are quite large, and Dr. Paul Thomas, his study. But every human study that compares vaccinated humans and unvaccinated humans, the vaccinated on every health measure are less healthy. So more autism, more asthma, more colds, more cancer, more, like you name the health outcome, the vaccinated are more unhealthy than the unvaccinated. Well, wouldn't it be the same for animals? I mean, we test our pharmaceutical drugs on animals first because of the similarity. So if humans are unhealthy in every study that's compared them, if we're more unhealthy when we're vaccinated, wouldn't it be the same with animals? Like that's what troubles me is if I want my milk to be from healthy animals. I want my meat to be from healthy animals. And so what are we doing? Are we driving pharmaceutical profits? Are we trying to put more pharmaceuticals in our food like that we eat? Like what are we doing? But I think we could have a show on that.
Absolutely. Well, Shawn, you always have so much wealth of knowledge. I hope for the audience, I asked the right questions, but I think moving forwards, I could do the week in advance. People get excited for the show. We could have a discussion with the audience of what exactly they want brought forwards, but either way, you're going to bring a great wealth of knowledge of what's happening with Bill C-224, what you guys are up to in the background, and what we could do as an audience to be able to fight for change so that we can live healthy lives healthy and happy lives for our family and not see everybody suffering. You know, we deserve it. We deserve it as Canadians to live the healthiest, most prosperous lives imaginable. And the only people that's going to take care of us is us. We need to fight for ourselves. So thank you so much, Shawn.
Thank you, Mark.
I'll leave a link to Shawn's website, and so that you could click and start doing your daily posting that Shawn recommends. And I'm on my regular show. I'm going to make sure that everybody does the exact same thing. So thank you so much. Thanks everybody for joining the live.